What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Bind, and today I'm gonna color some line art. Pretty much like you would have it in a graphic novel or a comic book. So if you're interested in that at all, stick around. So here's the deal, guys. You could pretty much consider this video a follow-up on a recent one where I did some line art digitally. Now, if you follow the channel or have been a guest on the channel in the past, you will know that I love line art and I have been doing quite a bit here on the channel. Mostly analog line art that I later scanned, digitalized, and then put color on it. But sometimes we did even color it with watercolor. So did the whole thing analog. And then also I've done variations in the past with different styles of color in Photoshop. Today, I want to break this down a little bit and make this as intuitive as possible, because once in a while, I just like to have a new approach. And then for some people, it's the more complicated way that they like more. And for some people, it's the more direct, intuitive way that they like more. And today we're doing the latter. So without further ado, let's get into Photoshop. All right, guys, this is the project. If you remember it from the last video that we're drawing the line art in, you will immediately see that I did a little bit of touching up and I put a second character over here. So if you wonder, man, I feel like I've seen these characters before. That's because I use them quite a bit, because for the past, by now it's been years, I've been trying to do a graphic novel secretly in the background, and that's just the stuff that I designed for that and that I'm using as an example here, because to come up with a original character every single time for a video, it would be too much to ask. And I don't want to just take other popular characters and draw them. That's I like to do my own stuff, and if you're here and if you know me, I think that's what you appreciate, and I think you're always looking to do your own stuff as well. That's why you're here. So we're going to color this in a bit, and the first thing is, if you're not so good with color, you might want to use some ref. And I pulled up some ref here. I'm not yet sure what we're going to use and not, because I have not pre-planned this. I'm just doing this intuitively. I don't know if we use any ref or which ref we're using. So this is the images that I had lying around in my inspiration folder on my hard drive. Some of them pretty old. So you can see we're going for a sunset theme. I think you can see this already a little bit by the hard shadows. It's the ocean side or the seaside here, and I want the light to come pretty much from the upper left here. So that means I want a light that comes in like this, very, very aggressive, and produce some hard shadows. And this is a challenge, of course, with a line art, because you don't want to use too dark of colors, because then you will not be able to see the difference between the black lines and the dark colors. So the color cannot be too dark, but we'll get to that, into that in a second. So for now, of these, they're quite different reference images. So in this here, you have a lot of tones, a lot of spectrum, because it's a clear day and maybe it's photoshopped a little bit. So you have over here, you can see you have the oranges, the reds, and the grays, like you always have in the sunset hue, pretty much. And then in the shadows, of course, the blues. Then again, those are shadow blues as well, just further back. And then all of the blues and purples in here. Some artificial lighting, but that's not relevant for us, because we don't have that, I guess. And then contrasting that is another image where you have pretty much a very narrow tonal spectrum, where you have just your yellow light, and then your reddish, sometimes looks like purple but it's really red, shadows. So it's a much narrower spectrum in this case than it is in the other image, where you go pretty much from oranges to blues. You go all the way from here into here. So yeah, pretty different. And then you have this late hour, almost golden hour, in the desert that I also like. But I think in this case we're not going to go with that, because as I am talking, I already kind of made up my mind to go. I think it's going to be a mix between these two, and because this might be a little bit too boring for the scene, or too monochromatic, too photographic, and this might be maybe a little bit too extreme, but we'll see where we get. So this is, for now, is what I'm trying to do. So I made this sketch as big as possible without me obstructing the scene too much, so that I can pretty much avoid zooming in, because I think that's maybe not that pleasant to look at. Also, I said it in the intro, I want to make this very intuitive. So for now, if you've seen the other video, you'll know I have the paper texture going on here. And for now, let's switch that off, because that is a layer that is transparent and does certain stuff. So if you pick the color, you will pick it through that filter, and then you will not have the exact color that you actually want. So for colorization, if you use any of that stuff, I recommend switching this off throughout the coloring process. So the sketch is built pretty simple. So there's the characters, there is the midground, and there's the background. Not much other to that, really. You could combine that also, and you could put it also in just a folder for better arrangement, and not to clutter up this layer section here too much. So now we have the paper, we have the sketch, and that way I can just access that. This is just a reminder of the light source. You don't really need that, it's pretty simple. And the perspective of the building will be such that these left sides are going to have light shine upon, and then the right sides are going to be in the shadow. The same way that the blacks in the environment from the sketch already suggested to be. Same way I'll put it on the character, the shadow. So have them a rim light or a striving light from the left, and then have a lot of shadow on the right, which excuse me, which means, like I said before, that you cannot have such harsh dark tones, because then everything in the image would pretty much be dark. So starting out, I'll have a quick look at the ref, and then we'll see how color behaves and what color we like, not too extreme. And for the beginning, some people say, yeah, don't take the color from the photo, it's cheating. And that's just bullshit, guys, because we're putting flat color. You cannot emulate this anyways, because I'm not going to do gradients. And also the photo, it has very granular colors. This actually is not a singular tone, it's a mixture of tones, and you can never really get the same thing anyways. So I'm just looking for tones inside here, and you can see that it flips around as I'm picking colors. That's because it's not a single tone, as I already said. And then I'm just seeing which color I like, and I will tune it anyways once it's on my canvas. So in this case, starting out, it would be this kind of a hue, and then maybe down there is what I like it to go towards the gray. It's really good look. And already we're starting, and as always, we're starting from rough to refined. So at first I will just lay down tones very roughly. So in this case, what I also like from the ref is those kinds of clouds. We'll see if we can get those, because now I need a way to change the tones without having a hue, because the premise is today is I'm not going to do soft color at all. So that means you would just put something like this here. And then of course, to colorize, is always also a question, what kind of a brush do we use? Today I'm only using lasso tool, and I'm only using the hard round. So I'm only using this kind of a very smooth edge, smooth and very accurate edge. That's what I want. Nothing else, nothing fancy. Of course, I could use the brush with which I drew the thing, but then again, you might not want to do this. But if you want some texture on the stroke, yeah, you can also do that. All right, so as you can see, I've put only 3 layers here, and that's because I'm only planning to use basically 3, or let's make that 4 actually, because we'll have the sky, we'll have the background, midground, and then the characters. So maybe we use 4, and maybe temporarily I'll use more, but the goal is, as I said it in the beginning, to make this extremely intuitive and not mess around. So you can also just draw stuff instead of selecting it with a lasso tool. Let's see here, I need a tone maybe in between. That would be cool. And that tone, it could be this tone. Yeah, already is not bad. And because I'm only using full opaque 100% opacity tones, I can extremely easily, as you can see, just pick the color and then continue drawing. And that is also something that I think is very convenient in this style. All right, so we have a gradient going on. I'm not going to, you can't judge this right now and say, oh, this is bad, this is not so good, because we need the rest of the color first. Also, I messed up here because I drew on a new layer. If that happens, it doesn't matter, you just merge the thing. And then we move on, basically, looking at the ref a few more times, but you will see that in time we will not use the ref anymore. So this is very extreme for my taste, this contrast to the blue. Let's see how it looks if we put it. Of course, just for the background. And I am sloppy now. So I don't care now about color bleeding or anything. And I will show you, or let's say you will in time realize why I'm not doing that. Because a lot of people now, they zoom in, they use the lasso tool, they try to make the exact selection, but really you don't need to do that, and towards the end you will realize why. So this is now the background, and again I'm just keeping the color for now. And let's see what they do over here in the front. Now in the front, a lot of that is in the shadow, and we cannot just put that because everything would be dark. So now we have to deviate from the ref quite a bit. And maybe we even use some of the purple, but I'm not a huge fan. I want to keep it a little bit more narrow between here and there maybe. So yeah, actually between the orange, and then we go all around here, and then we come down here for the shadow maybe. So the shadow, instead of having this, we could be having yeah, less dark. Because if you want the line art to be seen, you cannot go beyond a certain darkness. You see that? That's okay, I would say. But there is a limit to that. It's a very clear limit where also you cannot see the black volumes very good anymore. So the important thing for me is just to get all the stuff colored. I don't mind color overlapping to the outside of the volume, but I do matter not having everything included. So that's more of my that's more of what I want to avoid right now. Where I can, I'll be semi-exact, but really it doesn't matter too much. So you will see in a second what it means. Trying to do this here all on camera, something that you don't see a lot on YouTube. A lot of people are terrified of drawing in front of the camera. They will just do the time lapse, and then once they know that it went well, then they'll commit to uploading the video. Not bashing that at all. It's just I think it shows you how many professionals are still terrified of letting people look over their shoulder while they're drawing. Anyways, so then to counter erase this, I don't know if this is the exact professional term that you would use. I'm calling it counter erasing because I'm counter erasing those shapes a little bit. Just so it does not look too off, or but it's not, I'm not doing it very exact, as you can see. And this I don't want. I want to have everything included. Also those characters. So yeah, I'll go out of my way and have this all included here. And then over here, because you can see that it takes time to be exact. And in most cases, inside of the volumes, stuff will overlap anyways, and you will not have to be as exact as you think you have to be in the beginning. And that is part of what I want you to realize throughout the process today. And then I'm just going back and forth. It's annoying. Sometimes it's bugging out, I think. It's not letting you have the exact stroke that you want to. All right, so you can see that slowly you get the idea. And of course you can do all the shenanigans as always, holding the shift down in order to just connect lines. Very convenient. Trying to be a little bit more accurate where it counts more. So that you can see the shape better. But yeah, that's good enough. And then already we have to have the characters. Now for the characters, the ref does really not help me because they're just black, right? So that doesn't work. So in this case, I have to go back to common sense. Common sense is we have dark blue over here, but of course in front and on the characters you will have more of a variety of color. So I will make this a foundation that is also blue and a little bit gray. And what you can also do, what I do a lot, is to include the skin color in that. But really, for now, all we need is just to make those characters stand out a little bit so that you can differentiate the tones. So this is okay, but really it could be any color for now. Could be, maybe we go back to the skin tone a little bit, so that you can tell this apart a little bit better. So now I'm going to be the most accurate that I've ever been so far, because the characters, you need to judge them also by their anatomy, and the color has to make sense, the shading, in terms of how the anatomy is shaded and stuff like that. So with that, I'm not making such a huge exception over here. I'm just being rather accurate. And you can see that you really only need to be accurate on the outside for once, and then later we can lock the layer or create clipping masks to put more. And you can also see that you're getting away with using a much larger brush than you would think you have to use a lot of the times here. So I did all of this just with that big of a brush, and that is because, of course, the line art is in front and you cannot see the roughness of the edge there, so the line art helps a lot. And the thicker the lines are, the more forgiving this will be. But yeah, that goes without saying, I think. There we have second protagonist. And then we have some birds. I don't know yet what to do with the birds. And I'm switching here just between the brush and the eraser is having the same thing. Same properties on it. So it's really very easy to just switch in between. You could also select this with the lasso tool. Of course, there's personal preference. And for now, I just want to have a tone on everything. Conveniently, because this is 100% pure black in those volumes and in those strokes, I don't have to get everything in the dark here, because it's just blocking it out because it's 100%. So, but that is a matter of your style. If you're doing these the lines like this, then you will not have this problem. And if your lines are transparent, then you will have a huge problem. But I've already explained this when we drew the original piece here. So once the edges are resolved, we can just go take an even bigger brush and make sure we have everything in here. I'm not sure if this is everything. And then, so now the characters, I would say, are resolved already in terms of detail. Could do the same over here with those lines, but it's tricky for now because it's quite the contrast between that dark tone and the background, at least right now. That doesn't mean that it will stay this way. It's just for now it is the case, so you can't really see a lot either in here. There's supposed to be the vegetation, a little stuff. See, already this edge is kind of pretty good. It's different because there is growth stuff, and then we need a smaller brush for that. Always have the eraser ready, because the eraser is really what makes this fast. You didn't have the eraser, you will have to just go back and do it again and take all these steps back, which is not what I like to do. So I'm just erasing. And yeah, already this looks pretty okay. It's pretty accurate enough for my taste. Yeah, the only thing is that up here is not so accurate, but yeah, you can see that doesn't matter too much for now. So you develop this level of detail slowly. Now, next stop would be we need a different kind of a shading, and also now we have reached a point that is very critical for the image, and that is the point where everything has color, and it's very important to realize, because now we can start actually judging the color and we can tweak the color. I can go in here and say, you know what, this is still too dark for my taste. We'll have this lighten up, saturate it some more or not, right? And you can see that you will reach quite a different look now. So the question now is, what are we doing first? First, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm just changing some colors, making them integrate better into the scene. I think for now, yeah, this is, if anything, want this less saturated. And then the sky, I'm not sure if I like that. Let's look at the ref. There is very bright clouds in the sky. It is a cool effect. I'm going to try this for once, and I'm going to try this on a separate layer. So the clouds that they go is like very flat, swirling kind. Of course, they're illuminated now from here, right? My little arrow, because that was the plan all along. So yeah, that's still the plan, and that's still what we're doing. And then I think the interesting thing is what you want to highlight a little bit, which is creating more contrast over here. Now, is this better or not? In the small, it looks pretty okay. And also, we're not going to have the sun, obviously, because that yeah, then we cannot have the light from the side anymore, because that will be the light source, and that's why all the people here are black, right? Also, I'm just realizing that this is super bullshit Photoshop, because look at the shadow underneath the car. You would have a long shadow if this was really the sun, so this is just bullshit, right? So yeah, that's how it sometimes goes with images that you find on the internet. But that doesn't matter, because we're doing our own logic here. The only thing is that I kind of want to, because that is too extreme. I never liked this to begin with. So let's see. Maybe this is more it, right? Yeah, maybe like that. And then this is also pretty extreme. I have to have something in between here. And the in between, you can reach it in different ways. You could make this opacity go down just for once, pull it up, select the tone again, and now draw with full opacity. Keep drawing with full opacity, right? So that can be an option. It's a nice little trick there that I sometimes will utilize. Also, I'm still just looking for this to look good in a small format. And then I think this is too saturated in the clouds for my taste. Desaturating this, but making it brighter. So yeah, a little bit less artificial. I like that better. So Once, let's keep it for now. And then let's see, with the water, of course, there is no water in the ref, but I can tell you that, of course, the water would reflect some of that color here. So what it means is that where it's back here, it would for sure do something like this, maybe in not as an extreme way. So yeah, something like this, in order for it to really sell as water. Something like this would happen. And yeah, let's see, maybe this makes sense. And then we'll use some of the white here, of course, and then some of the maybe shadow for some of these waves back there. They'll slowly integrate. And now I'm counter painting. I just select the same tones. They're already in this layer, right? So right now in this layer is only this. And I just select from that and then paint with that. I'm now aiming at having only 3 or 4 tones each layer that make this much more rendered already. And I will be able to decide if I like it. And if you have 2, 3, maybe 4 tones in one layer and it doesn't look good, you need to change those tones, because it's not like it will magically start looking good once you refine it more. If you think that, you're wrong. It needs to look good in a simple fashion. And so if you look at that, already you see that it makes visual sense, and it looks in small, it looks pretty okay. If it doesn't, then you're doing it wrong or you're judging it wrong. And it could be either one of those. So, and it's very hard to tell sometimes. I'm going to make one more last layer for the birds. Now birds, they need to be dark because, yeah, obviously they're against the sun being somewhere over here. It cannot be too bright. It would be, or let's say they will have to have some contrast maybe, but we'll see in a second. And here also, I let the color bleed a little bit outside. You don't need to be insanely accurate at all times. It's just an illusion in the end. It sells because of the overall appeal and not because you are super accurate and you zoomed in on every single detail. That's not why. That's usually never why. So once this looks okay-ish, I'm moving on. Moving on to the midground, because that is the biggest thing here. And now I can use common sense again. I have the blue and I have the red. A normal color for the ground would be just a brown. But in this case, remember, everything looks more the same in the back and more different in front. That's the rules of atmospheric perspective. So if I was to paint the ground like normal, like this is not working very well. But now, if you do a variation of that, giving it some of the light, of the yellow reddish tint, I would say, we just have to go darker a little bit and more saturated. So something like this would work a lot better. Now what I'm doing is I'm locking the layer, because then I cannot draw outside of the layer, as you guys of course know. Well, at least if you if you watch my stuff, I've explained this 1,000 times. It's very, very handy. And now we need to discern between different tones and what they mean. There has to be a ground, which is this. And I'm not doing this very accurate now because I don't know if this is the right tone, right? So it would be here and it would be in here maybe, somewhere in between the rocks. And then of course we need the rocks. And the rocks usually are pretty much grayish. They don't have an extreme color. So maybe I will go for something like this even for the rocks. And at least where they're illuminated. And now where they're illuminated is on the side that light is coming from this side, remember. So the rocks would be illuminated here, as I did it already in the sketch, pretty much. Now the question is this too extreme or not? And the answer is, I don't know yet, because I can't see enough of that yet. But what I know is that on this side, there's only striving light, because light comes in that way, and you will not be able to. Of course, you can't erase. That's stupid. That was stupid from me. Yeah, you will just have to lay it down a little bit more and then see if it makes sense in a second. I keep wanting to erase. It's just a bad habit. So this needs to make sense, and then the rest of the rocks stuff, always the light from the left, upper left, but very, very steep lighting. This rock is self-shadowing, that's why I'm doing it that way. And then let's see over here what we have to do with these. And the same thing again. Now you see, I just left this here, and it doesn't matter because sooner or later you have to paint over it anyways. That's just the nature of doing it like this. So that's why also, again, no need to be terribly accurate in the beginning. The more you progress, the more accurate you can get, and then it makes sense. But in the beginning, it really does not. And then there could be another rock color, right? And maybe that other rock color is the blue that is already there, because we have the rock color potentially again on everything that is stone, like in the building. So potentially this is going to be the same color as the rock, because of course this is almost like rock, and in an extreme lighting situation like what we have here, you will not be able to tell it really apart from the rock. So there will be a shadow of the bell, I guess. And then it will pretty much behave like this, somewhat like this. This is around it, so it's hard to say where it falls off, right? Somewhere in between here. Maybe we'll give it a little bit more. And again, just painting it out if I don't, and where I don't want it to occur. So let's see. This is not bad, this kind of a color. And yeah, let's get results more quick. I have the same tone over here. And then, yeah, pretty much all throughout here. We have some self-shadowing of the building, of course. And then what is also convenient is, I'll show you this in a second, is that once you have a color palette, and this is now slowly getting to where we have one. Once you have a color palette, you can, of course, take tones and reuse them. That helps keep the image together. For example, now maybe for the metal part, I want something that is a little bit more reflective. So either I want it to be like that, or I say, you know what, maybe it's be reflective of the light that's coming from the left, and it's be much brighter because it's metal. And then other stuff is also metal, like this one maybe, and like over here. And then all of a sudden we have this kind of a shine on it, and we can differentiate material through this, just through the tone, because we're not putting texture or anything in this one. So now we need another tone. Actually, we need quite a few other tones, additional tones, I should say. And one is for vegetation, of course. So the grass, the trees, they need to come into tonal existence. Let's say, and then we need a tone that is working in those extremer lighting conditions. But for now, I'm erasing again. This will be the theme of this, that I'm too stupid to not erase. So, stone, of course, would also occur here. And then maybe some passive shadow, and you can actually, if you want to express this in the exact same tone, would be fine. So now the good thing is, since I'm not having any white anymore on the image, every tone I cannot accidentally just pick up white or something like that, which is a huge deal, and it's what you want. You don't want white to linger on the image, also because you're not going to be able to judge color if you still have white in the image. So that's why in the very beginning I said, now we reach a crucial point where white is eliminated. That is really a crucial point, and yeah, you need to eliminate white as soon as possible, because now if you look at the small thing, we can judge color already. Now, of course, I need a vegetation. For vegetation, there's a little trick. So let's say the vegetation is green, but we have a blue shadow. So the blue shadow will dominate, of course, the greens, which are not going to appear really as green, but we know, of course, in our head that they are green, which is why we would like to pick a green, but I fear in this lighting condition we just cannot. So what I'm going to do on the spectrum, I'm going more towards green. Let's say a greener blue, let's call it that, okay? And then I just have to put an even darker tone, because like it or not, the vegetation absorbs the most light in the tree, in the grass, so that will be the darkest, right? And right now it would look like this. That's not good enough in terms of a contrast. Now it's getting there. So let's see. Don't forget to lock the layer. Now we cannot lock the layer. If we cannot lock the layer, because the reason why I want a separate layer is that I can play with the slider in a second. So right now I'm just making this a clipping mask, so to avoid all of this stuff. That just means I cannot draw outside of the original area here, which is this whole area. Also, the more you do this, the more you understand those kinds of tricks. It's vegetation here, everywhere, and it doesn't really matter where it ends too much, because it's a blue in blue situation anyways. So all of this is going to be vegetation. And in between, of course, there's going to be a little bit of stone, which is already represented by the shadow color. And then also, yeah, let's call it dirt or just ground color. Well, basically it's most of that, right? So most of that, and then rock is coming through in some parts, but really maybe it's like this, right? So this grass color, of course, is also going on here and in the vegetation over here, which makes that a little bit dark, but it doesn't mean that it needs to stay dark everywhere. We can brighten this up and give the vegetation that is here in the foreground and over here some highlights. And for that, it's also good to keep this a little bit separate for now. So same here, the vegetation here, make it a little bit darker. There's new vegetation. I haven't painted this yet. And sometimes you just need a little bit of the bleeding of the color, and that is enough to suggest there's a greenish tone. Because now you can see that you kind of see the green in comparison to the rest, but that's also your brain telling you this is green. But because it's a little bit more in the green spectrum, in fact, it will sell the illusion a little bit better. Greens over here, typical. And then here is a case, there is a tree in the background that I want to express some distance of this background. I'm not yet sure how to do it, but it needs to be a brighter color that is more, that experiences some atmospheric perspective, meaning that it goes more towards the red of the sky. So that way we can maybe then sell it. But let's see. For now, this is fine. And everywhere that needs to be green, I'll just put some blobs here without refining too much. There's vegetation here, and then some is here, and then some is even on the rocks, which is like a mossy overgrowth thing, I guess. Some down here and some down here, and also there is a starting here. The question is then always how do you express that? And what I'm doing is I'm just letting some color bleed over here, and then you kind of get it, right? Just a more stylized look. But that has also to do with the style of the lines that you lay down. Not every line work can go together well with every kind of colorization technique. That's just the nature of it, to see how you make it work. So now what we can do is what I said earlier, we can play around with this. So now I can make this whole grass thing lighter or darker. And you can see that making it darker is really, I will not do that, because there is a threshold here where if it's darker than that, it will pretty much combine with the black visually, and I want a distinction between the the black line art and the tones at all times. So my darkest color will always be no more than 1/5 down the spectrum, and that's it. So then, now I said already that this needs to be resolved a little bit. Now it is very different from that, you can see that. So if I were to mix this, I would say it would be less blue, more towards the red spectrum, and then brighter. So let's try. So yeah, I think it kind of works better. Not the best yet, and maybe we need the same thing with a tint of red. Yeah, it immediately works better, you see. Now we push this in the background a lot more, and then maybe also darker. Yeah, I think so. So now it's more readable. That was the idea originally, that this would be behind everything. Silhouetting, kind of nice. Now, next thing is we have to take care of the characters, because this is becoming a little bit intricate, and now the characters are really lacking behind. So that means we need to really take care of the characters. So now what you need to know to colorize characters is what color are the clothes actually. And then you have to imagine that receiving the red tint from the sky, and then you can approximate the colors. So for example, easiest thing is this guy has a white shirt on. It doesn't look white right now. And so I will take some of the sky color. White would be like this. And now I'm giving this the red tint. So it would look something like this compared to the rest. And maybe that's good and maybe it's not so good. But for now, it's going to be enough. And then those backpacks are, of course, brownish, right? So maybe like this and maybe a little bit darker than this. So let's see what we get there. Of course, okay, I made a mistake. I made a very stupid mistake. Forgot to lock the layer here. So we've been here with that color of the guy, and then the backpack color, I think we settled for something like this. So now there is those things. Now you can already see that skin is much too bright, not too bright, but too desaturated, basically. So the guy could have, I think the guy has blondish hair, maybe like this. I don't know. And then the other skin colors, of course, will have to be much more saturated. Much more like this, right? Maybe this guy. Bit fairer skin on this guy. And then there's really not too much skin tones left here. So slowly, we can see if this integrates or not. And then, of course, we have blue from the shadows again, which can slowly try out here with a little bit of opacity. Yeah, it looks okay. It's really just a darker version of the red and much less saturated. Maybe even less so. And I think in fact this will be most of it will have this color. So of course you can always in illustration, right, you can cheat a little bit in terms of the lighting and the shadow. Not everything has to be extremely accurate. You can do 85% of the right angle of light, and then that's going to be enough. It's going to be fine, and you'll get away with that easily. So next thing is the same thing applies to all of that stuff, because that is supposed to be leather and yeah, dark brown stuff, and or metal. And for the metal we have more of a solution. It gets more, usually we had that as a highlight for the metal, right? And then there's some metal here, come to think of it, but really not too much metal. That's, maybe we can pull this off, like the shiny metal on here. And then as for the other metal color, it's usually a mix of the environment just being reflective, right, and all of that. Also in here, the blue shadow on the white shirt is going to be very, very blue, just like in back there in the very background. And then I'm using that same thing to put some highlights, blue highlight on the hair maybe. Right, so this works okay. And then we need, what else do we need? So the guy's jacket is going to be dark. And now I'm at the point where I'm just mixing and matching colors that I see in the scene, right? And just approximating colors from feeling, basically. So this guy will have the dark jacket, and it will have the greenish top, which it could really, in fact, look like this, like an olive green thing going on. And of course the shadow color on this will be pretty extreme. So I guess, yeah, even more than this. Right, so yeah, remember where the light is coming from, and then we can usually make this yeah, sell this angle. I think it works pretty well. Now what else? Yeah, in the face, those, yeah, shadows, we have to see about that. The hair, I think, well, maybe a little bit too extreme, but then again, maybe not. Maybe that's exactly what you need to sell it. So you can see throughout this process that the advantage a lot of the times is that I don't need to think about layers, because layer structure is simple. We're still on one layer just for the characters, and it doesn't matter, right? We're not being very accurate, but also that doesn't matter. We can always yeah, refine that as we go along. So really the illusion of that you have to be accurate at all times is just exactly that. It's an illusion and it doesn't really matter. You can see the more shadow you put, then this becomes much nicer in a way. It sells the look of the sunset a lot more. Let's see. Sometimes, you know, you will not have much of a skin tone left actually, and that's fine, because really you just want to sell you just want to sell the whole environment, the lighting of the environment, and it's not super clear from the beginning how this will look like once you progress. So you have to just accept logic, let logic in, and just go along with it. In this case, yeah, I would almost say it's all in the shadow. And then over here you will see differences. Yeah, much more like this. Maybe it's can do a little bit of a rim lighting like this, but yeah. Be careful what you wish for, is what they say. And what they mean is that if you want the sunset, you have to accept what comes with the sunset, right? And that is a lot of dark and not a lot of natural skin tones. It will be all blown out pretty much a lot of the times. So for the pants, we need, I think we need a darker brown. Maybe it's the same brown even, maybe almost the same. Yeah, I think that's it. And then of course there's details later on. And using then the leather tone again for his holster. But since the tones are so similar, you see that you don't need accuracy really. It's fine. It will sell either way, right? Shadow from the shirt. So this is this correct? Because he's turned towards almost like the building. So I would say, yeah, that's fine. Then I need a little bit of a darker tone for the pants. Yeah, and that now you see that most of this stuff actually has to be dark again. So the actual color is not coming through a lot of stuff. And that's, again, is by design. You cannot really change that. You cannot, is mostly people fail in their color composition when they try to force their will too much in spite of what the scene tells them that is true, right? So all these decisions lead up now to me making these character decisions here. And once you do them, you will say that actually it turns out okay. The metal again. Actually, not the metal. I was using this for metal, yeah. So let's see. The gun. And those little appliances. And then we have also some leatherish thing. Actually, I like this tone better in this case. So yeah, we can mix and match again. This was the beginning of the metal, establishing the metal color. And yeah, I just want this to glow a little bit so that you can read it better. Not to overdo it or anything. But I think it works. It works. So just resolving this a little bit over here. I think that's fair, right? Okay. The shoes, yeah, shoes need to come. And the shoes, yeah, usually it's a little bit too bluish for my taste. A little bit less blue. And those soles, you could say, are one of those brown tones, right? I guess that would work, or even this tone, maybe. Yeah, it's better. More neutral, not, yeah, don't need to stick out really that much. And then over here, we do the same. Highlight the boots, right? A little bit shiny boots, maybe. And then, yeah, that is that. Maybe use the blue for this fabric here, because this is supposed to be almost black, or black in fact, but of course you have to see a little bit of tonal differences. And now we can see, are the characters okay? Are they too dull? How is everything else behaving? So now what I can do, actually, we have those greens, and we have the rocks over here. So first of all, we'll see what we can do with the characters, because I can of course boost saturation, which you can immediately see it's not a bad idea, because I was kind of holding back a little bit. Boosting saturation, you get more vibrancy in the color, which is matching the sky pretty well. So I think I'll keep that. But also you could produce now a hue. You could even go more towards the red. But I think I nailed it pretty much. If you go more, it looks maybe a little bit too extreme compared to the rest of the landscape. But the rest of the landscape, of course, we can also tune that now a little bit, and maybe that's a good idea. So here we go. And that's an advantage of this simple all-on-one layer approach, that you can just now, right, tune the whole thing. So we want this. This is better. I immediately see that. But the thing that is better is, yeah. Is everything better though? No, not everything is better, but it's overall is pretty okay. So saturation, I don't think we need to boost that. That's becoming like too unnatural territory here. I'll not boost that. In fact, might put it even down a little bit. Other than that, I like it. We could go for contrast. Not for contrast is the levels over here. So yeah, but you see what happens if you lower these mids? You will not be able to see the stroke anymore. So that's not good for coloring a drawing, in my opinion. So I'm not doing that. The thing that I'm interested in more is to change a little bit the outliers. Can we make these brighter? Does it make sense? It almost makes sense, I guess, a little bit. So getting more contrast in Really subtle though. Yeah, maybe like this, right? All right, the same goes, of course, for the sky. Sky is the thing that we need to tackle it again. But of course, the sky can also provide, make a huge difference. See, now we're going just through the spectrum just a little bit. And I almost like it better when it gets more red, to be honest with you. Because it's kind of what I see in these highlights happen. Just have this be a little bit more red, I would say. Saturation up, I don't know. It's a little bit too extreme maybe. It's not a bad look. With a little bit more of the, yeah, of the red. This almost a little bit too red, you could argue, but then again, let's see. Grass and vegetation. I'm leaving this like it is. And now what we can do is we can put a little bit of highlights on that. So the highlights would be, we have this tone, and then the highlights can be even greener, I guess. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, I have some of that. I have some of these highlights here. And because it's really in front, it is, yeah, it is okay to have it really more green than if it was in the background, right? We've already discussed that. I'm not putting highlights on the grass. I think that is too extreme. Just maybe the long grass a little bit, but not this regular grass. You will not make this work. I think. Also for the tree, would be very minimal highlights on the tree. A little bit here and there, and then yeah, maybe like this, maybe like this. And then a little bit over here. And just a little bit over here. So we create some nice little speckles of a brighter green. And that way you have the impression that it's really rendered a lot more than it actually is. But we can't overdo it because yeah, it's not, in reality this would be pretty dark. All right. So the thing that kind of does not integrate anymore so well is this here. I think this got overdone. So we'll make this just a brighter version of the vegetation blue, which I think is the right call to make. Because it actually is not that far away. So it was kind of a misjudgment on my side. And once you see it, of course, it's still easy to fix. Now, some stuff that we need to tackle, the bell, the metal of the bell. And then again, I'll mix and match now. This was supposed to be brighter, right? No? You can see that if it works, if it's that is actually, let's see, selling the illusion of metal. And oftentimes, if you take some of the environment's colors here, you will, I think, achieve something that sells, because all the metal is doing is really reflecting the environment in a way. So as long as you emulate that, you will achieve kind of that look that you want, right? So also here's some more vegetation. And then, yeah, the ground, of course, needs to have some, also some shadow color. And that shadow color, it needs to be at least that, right? I think, yeah, something like this. So now put a little bit of that, and now I'm just pretty much painting with the hard round. Still not obsessing over detail too much. I just want it to read nicely in a smaller form over here. And of course, the thing that sticks out a little bit is the rock color. I have to see if we have to do something about that. So in here, I will just mix color. I'll just be sloppy on purpose here. That doesn't matter. You can't have everything with an exact border, at least not in my style, because you see I produce a lot of open lines, and these open lines you just yeah, cannot contain every color inside a line container, so to speak. So that's not what I'm not even trying to do this. We had different tones here, right? It's weird. So again, you see, no need to be overly accurate in here. Now, as for those rocks, I think they need to be a little bit darker. Because they're too close to the reflectiveness of the metal for my taste. And now well, there's actually a trick to do this. A trick to, and now I messed this up, by the way. So I'm drawing in there, but I'm not going to change that. So we'll just merge the layers. So showing you a trick, replacing one flat color with another. You can do this via layer blending. So here's what you do. Just the new color, and the old color is this color. So the old color is brighter than the new color, right? So then once you go in here and you say blending options, what did I say? The old color was brighter than the new color. That's right. So what we're doing is we pop out the underlying layer. There will be a point between here and not this one. Yeah, and here, basically where it will just block it out. The thing that I forgot is that other colors are also in that spectrum, so it doesn't work that well, right? Okay, separate that with Alt. Almost, yeah, almost. Right, so did we replace it? Of course, this needs to be a clipping mask, right? You see that over here? You can clearly see that we kind of did it, achieved that look. The question now is, do you like it better or not? Me, I like it better. Maybe the only thing is that exclude that thing with the bell. Other than that, I think, yeah, this is now, we kind of achieved that. Having those rocks a little bit, just that little bit more desaturated. And you can still tweak this color, of course. Make it more yellow, maybe. This could be it. I'm not sure. This or that. I'm going to go with, I think, this one. So once you have that, you can merge these layers and then be on your way. And then, of course, with the new found tone, continue painting. Now we need increasingly smaller and smaller brushes, of course, to just express differences here in the landscape. And now I'm just picking up and mixing pretty much everything. Back there, if there's rocks, we can do the same thing. And then get a little bit more granular with the rendering, of course. That now is a lot of more detailed work, but it will ultimately, I think, sell the whole thing much better. How much of that you want to do is up to you, of course. And I would say that at this point, you understood what I'm doing well enough. So how about I'll just do a little bit more of this off camera, because this is I think the refining of this is taking a while. It will take a while, and you don't why not see this in a time lapse. So see you in a second. Guys, we're done here. I hope you liked the process, so let me quickly explain what I've done here and what you just saw in the time lapse, okay? So, as you can see, the result is still flat colors and there's no gradients whatsoever. Just like I said, it would be in the beginning, right? So this is a very retro style. You could see the color switch around sometimes. That's because what I like to do is once in a while just go in here, maybe do some color balance or some saturation, and just have a look, you know, what could have been. And sometimes you end up slightly changing color balance, but as you can see, it's pretty close to what we started with. It changed just a little bit to pull those tones just further together. That is really what the goal is here, to have this reddish tint all over the image, right? So then we pretty much have the same layers as before. Also, what we can do now is turn the paper texture back on, have this nice organic look back, and we still have only one layer for the characters. We still have only one layer for the main environment, I would say. But as you saw, I would put the occasional clipping mask layer on there just to try out maybe one tone. I did this for the grass, the vegetation, and yeah, just see if some more extreme tones, if you like them or not. And that way you can also have them separate for a little while, and maybe also go through the spectrum here via the hue and saturation settings and see what exact hue you want to get. And then once you decided on that, I merged the layers back together, as you can also see. And then there is the background. Of course, it's always handy to have that separate too, because contrast behaves different in the background than in the foreground. I've already went into this, and then this is just a little thing in here, is the cloud rendering, because at one point I decided to have more of a rendered cloud, and then I wanted to have them separate to be able to move them, and at one point I think I cut one away from the rest and then just put it somewhere else. So in order to be able to do that, it is always a good idea to keep some stuff that makes sense separate. And then finally there's the background, and it is really a simple layer structure. And it took me now, what you saw in the time lapse was like an additional 2 hours. So in total the coloring process is between, I would say 3.5 to 4 hours at my pace. That is, if you know what you're doing, and if you do a little bit of experimentations with the tones, just so you have a little bit of an understanding. Let's just see this, yeah, clearly for once. And I would say what you can also see is that if we zoom in here just a little bit, we pretty much retained that very traditional look. I hate this new feature in Photoshop where you just pull on the mouse and I will just zoom like crazy. So yeah, I think you can see that it's a limited detail, but I think it is enough detail for this demonstration. So yeah, but let me know down below what you think about it, and whether you agree on the process or what you would personally do differently. So guys, that has been the process. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you liked it. Hope you liked the process too, and the result. Of course, if you hop over to my ArtStation, you're able to download this image for yourself, see it in a higher resolution. Also, leave your comments, questions, suggestions down below. As always, let me know your favorite approach of colorizing line art, and then see you again soon in another video. Take care.